All right, RFK Jr. is one step closer to becoming the next Secretary of Health and Human Services after a crucial vote in the Senate Finance Committee approved his nomination. Pivotal Republican Senator backed Kennedy with assurances to uphold current vaccine recommendations and maintain public access to vital health services. His nomination faces a full Senate vote soon, where he can lose a few Republican votes if all Democrats oppose him. Now, if confirmed, Kennedy will oversee a $1.7 trillion department that regulates essential health policies. It's been put that RFK Jr. could be, for the Democrats, given he used to be one, the best candidate that the Democrats will ever get. And there are some fears that if they don't get him over the line, maybe with a protest vote, but enough to maybe get him there, then Trump will hit him with someone that they really hate.
That's a very interesting thought process. Certainly, for sure, there could be somebody who is extremely conservative, very, very Republican. But it was fascinating to listen to the Finance Committee today. All of the Democrats, including Senator Warren, Senator Sanders, and others, all say no. But needless, the Republicans, they had enough votes to vote him out of committee. So now it goes to the full Congress to be voted on. We're thinking so far it could be potentially next week. But I talked to some lawmakers and they said that they have never seen such support on Capitol Hill for these hearings. There are so many American moms who are supporting him. And that is what that MAHA movement is, which is Make America Healthy Again. And Aaron, for you in Australia, it's very different in the United States. It's kind of like the secret is out, where moms know that these huge food corporations and companies are making food that have more healthy ingredients for other countries that have stricter health laws than here in the United States.
It's such a great point, and it's something that I think that we don't think about in other countries. So I was hearing someone talk the other day about when you get a loaf of bread in the United States, it lasts a month. Now, if you buy a loaf of bread in Australia, after about 3 days, you're thinking about breadcrumbs. 4 days, you're thinking about bread and butter pudding, although I think about that all the time. By day 5, you're chucking it out because it's starting to go moldy. You wouldn't even feed the dog, right? But in the US, what are you putting in there? Then there's the fact that fries at some of our favorite restaurants have these trans fats that we just don't allow in countries like Australia. Yet it's a crucial ingredient. And it seems that the marketing and the taste and the longevity of the product is put ahead of what you can actually eat and consume as human beings. Now, that's a legitimate question. I think that the problem with RFK Jr. is his previous thoughts on vaccines.
So we have heard from him where he talks about saying that he does believe there is a space for vaccines, but he feels that it should be up to individuals to make those decisions. So he was repeatedly asked during the beginning of some of these confirmation hearings about that. Is he going to end vaccines? Is he going to take those rights away? And he has continued to say no. He is an attorney. He has been working in this section, this health area for decades, and continues to just champion some other issues that he's really looking to.
I don't know. I've got to jump in there because I feel that there are some things that, for example, a parent with a particular view, a parent with a mental health challenge who has some unreasonable dislike of a vaccine. We think about polio, we think about some others that have really been proven to make a positive change. If you are someone who gets to make a decision about vaccines on behalf of someone in your care, really that is the point of the government, to make sure that they step in, just as we want to make sure that children are looked after. I don't know about that. I do think that there are legitimate questions about being forced into taking the COVID vaccine. I think a lot of people who have taken it say if they could go back in time, the whole handling, the way that we were essentially told that if we didn't get numbers to 94, 95% of the population, we wouldn't get our freedom back. That, in hindsight, feels really weird, sitting where we are today, being told that the vaccines would prevent us from being able to give COVID to other people has not turned out to be accurate. We think about how AstraZeneca now no longer is available because of the health concerns that we've seen there. There are great questions that, as journalists, we should be able to ask, but there are also points where if we say it should be up to human beings, well, gosh, imagine if we did that across the board what things would look like?
Well, so a couple of things, here in the United States, obviously we have long heard from Democrats, my body, my choice. That's something, very much so usually brought up in the conversation of abortion. Also have religious liberties. And so if it's against your religion, you do not have to receive any vaccines. So that's something else here in the United States. So we do have choices. So when it comes to RFK and what he's talking about with this, he's just simply saying, let's look at it. Obviously, when you look at the efficacy rates, we've long been told from doctors and scientists that sometimes it takes 5 years to do a proper study. So when you look at the rollout specifically of those COVID vaccines, there was not a 5-year study done. So that's a whole nother issue, talking about exactly
and that's
how
what
that
I'm
all
referring
went
to.
down.
I feel that is something that I think history will look back on unfavorably and say, what on earth were we thinking? But there was such pressure because of the concern of people dying and the need to reopen from those lockdowns that essentially government said, hey, yeah, it needs 5 years, but they said that really since DNA was first discovered, that the mRNA vaccines go back to that, and therefore these are vaccines that have been in the works for 20 or so years. It's just the first time that they're being used, which is why they were able to get them out so quickly. It is good to have people who are able to ask questions, and obviously there's always going to be the Trump test. And you would have to say, and this is a question for you, when we talk about these secretaries of health, foreign secretary, of course, secretary of state, how much power do they have? Because it always feels like in the Trump administration, the buck stops with the president.
Meaning what? When things go
well,
right?
Let's say,
or?
for example, if RFK was to be an anti-vaxxer when he gets the role and was to try and push through some things that don't pass what we call the pub test, will he be able to, or will President Trump be able to step in and say, I don't think so?
Well, I suppose with any administration, we've always seen, a president being the ultimate, kind of like when you're looking at companies, the CEO really making those choices. But, he has
But how
repeatedly
much
said,
leeway will a secretary have under the Trump administration compared to others, is my point.
Well, we saw his first administration, they had a lot of leeway. And so I think it will be, time will tell. But you have to understand, they're all really under the same amount of thinking. They've been huddled together having these meetings at Mar-a-Lago. We heard from Tulsi Gabbard. She also made it out of her committee today, kind of just saying that as soon as the election was called, they got right to it. They were having meetings down in Mar-a-Lago. They were moving forward. They have an agenda. In the first 3 weeks, we haven't seen so much activity coming out of the Oval Office in a very long time. And so they really have had this kind of planned. So it will be interesting to see the leeway of it. But obviously, Trump does like to be involved. So I do think, though, that they are all on somewhat of the same page with a lot of these different initiatives.
Yeah, well, one of the most liberal lunatics ever to have run for office was what Trump said about RFK 9 months ago. So we'll see how they get along. Obviously, things change once a nomination is all sorted. But yeah, it is certainly going from being the third candidate in that election race, running as an independent, to all of a sudden they made up, went on stage at the convention and bringing RFK. How important do you think it was for Trump to win the election to have RFK jump from being a third-party candidate to being on board the Trump train?
Well, I think that should really show you the sentiment of the seriousness of all of these. And have Tulsi Gabbard, she was a Democrat. Same with RFK. I mean, we heard a lot of pushback from his family members, including Caroline Kennedy. I mean, just, really long lists that were, really not quite flattering. And so if they are able, these Democrats, to say that they are behind what they believe in and that it doesn't have to be a label, it doesn't have to be a name or a specific party, that it's more of an idea when you're looking at these morals, values, how you see things moving forward for the country, and that you can be a bigger person and come together for the greater good, to see that through. I certainly think the American people see that, and that's what they want. They want the adults back in the room. They don't want to see a lot of infighting and things just not getting done. Every day they have to get up, the American people, and go to their job and figure out a lot of things. And when you come and you look at Washington, D.C. and government, and there's another task force, and the budget still isn't balanced, and let's make another committee and spend more money, they're kind of saying, well, what the heck's going on? I have to be responsible in my life and figure things out. Why can't the politicians do it in D.C.? And I really think that was the mandate that you saw with this election, with President Trump and the people that were surrounding him and supporting him, winning the popular vote as well as the Electoral College.
Veronica, host of In America Today right here on Ticker. Appreciate your thoughts as always. Talk soon.
Thanks, Aaron.